What's up everybody, we're back. In this video, I sat down and had a chat with Ryan Cohen. He runs a recording studio in Vermont called Robot Dog Studio. He's also the creator of the plugin Robot Dog Drums. The first time I found Ryan, it was on TikTok after he released Robot Dog Drums. And that plugin is great, I'll show you in a different video. But what really stood out to me about his content was how much he wanted to share his knowledge and his passion about recording music, in addition to promoting this plugin. And all his videos really show just how practical he is. He's not just another YouTuber that shows you the latest and greatest piece of gear that you need to have right now. His videos really show you the process of how he gets stuff done. It's stuff you can watch right now, learn a lot, and then apply it to your own recording process. I had a lot of fun with this video. Ryan's a cool dude, I'm glad he stopped by. So in this chat, we talk about how Ryan taught himself to code and built his own drum plugin, talk for a little bit about impulse responses, and then we talk about how he's building his own studio after getting kicked out of his commercial studio. If you like recording music, I would encourage you to go subscribe to his channel. I'll have it linked in the description. Lots of good, useful stuff on there. He's been doing a lot of whole band live recording videos. You just don't see that too much anymore. Real quick, right before we get into this chat, I want to tell you about this company I'm working with called Rocklock. Their first product is this universal strap lock that works on almost any guitar without having to change your strap button. Put it on your strap, slide it over the button, listen for the click, and you're locked in. These things are made of resin, they're very strong, I've done pull-ups on them, I can't break them. I hold the record for the most guitar spins with a Rocklock, and it is just my favorite strap lock. They come in 4 colors right now, and if you want to learn more about the Rocklock, links are in the description. And with that being said, here's my chat with Ryan Cohen of Robot Dog Studio. I watched your video about the creation of Robot Dog Drums, and you mentioned that there was stuff missing in the market at the time. I think it was 2020 or 2021?
Yeah, it was around 2020, exactly. It was in that time.
Right, and the big players there were like Tune Track, and I had addictive drums. I was unique in that. I don't think any other players were in the market then. What did you feel like you could add to the market? You mentioned that you were missing something from what was out there, and that led you to create what is now Robot Dog Drums.
Yeah, well, I have what I've said many times is like some of these packages were just so polished that you put them into your mix and they sounded fake. They sounded like, I don't know, like Motley Crue drums, like huge, and then other ones, they sounded too raw and you had to do too much work to them to get them to fit into a mix and actually sound professional. So it seemed like there was a sweet spot in the middle that was missing. And I don't think I've really talked about this much, but I think part of what was going on was there was just a disconnect between the recording of the samples, the coding of the software, the user interface, and then the end user. I think these are big companies and they're have different people doing all these jobs. And I think a big advantage or big thing that I was able to do was I'm someone who records and produces bands. I mix the songs and then I even master them. So I'm in touch with every step of the process, teching and tuning those drums, producing, offering suggestions, and then taking it to the final mix and master. So I was able to do that with the software as well as learning to code and kind of shaping the interface to like what I would want to use as a producer. Everything I want to have accessible and nothing that I don't. So I was really able to integrate it into my workflow and my whole aesthetic and everything. And I think I haven't really talked about that much because it's kind of a mouthful, but I think that's probably why I think that in some respects I felt like mine was more successful and maybe people are responding to it in a different way than the software that was out there at the time.
So I don't know how to code. I don't know how to make plugins. I don't know anything about it. I wouldn't know where to start. Like, I get the idea of capturing samples and capturing a bunch of different samples and applying those to different velocities and stuff like that. But my question to you is, did you know how to code before making this plugin? And what kind of coding and programs did you have to do to make this plugin?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know how to code at all. Like, not at all. I mean, I had made a website here or there. I think like what person our age like hasn't. And of course I would just Google anything I needed to do, copy and paste that. And I was sort of into programming as a kid because there was early computers coming out. And way back then, you would even have to program something in to play a game or something. But I never really understood the mechanics of how it all worked out. It was again just copy and pasting. I would read out of a book and type it into the computer. So this was around 2020, 2021. So I was pretty much stuck at home with nothing to do. So I downloaded some courses. Well, one course in particular on the scripting language within Contact. And I think that was another question on our list was like, why Contact? And it's because I'm not an expert programmer. I'm not an expert coder. And Contact just was a platform where kind of all the delivery and all the stuff that was way over my head was kind of set up for you. So it was just like a little easier to get into that world than if I was creating a plugin from scratch and I was going to try to figure out how to get it delivered and like licensed on all different operating systems and get it copy protected, all kinds of stuff like that. So it was overwhelming enough to try to get Contact to do everything that I wanted my plugin to do. So I think if I was coding something from scratch, I would probably still be working on it, and I don't know if it would be as fluid as the product is. That said, I would really like to program something from scratch in the future. I mean, folks have their qualms with Contact, and it's great for what it is, and there are definitely some different things that I could do coding something from scratch. So it's definitely something I want to pursue in the future.
Are there any downsides to using Contact? Because I come from a world of like guitar amp sims, and I think Guitar Rig is the only one that I know of that uses Contact Player. Everybody seems to make their own standalone thing for the most part. What's the downside of using something like Contact Player?
I don't know. It's I don't know what you call it. It's a legacy product. It's been around for 20 or years or more, or something like that. Not sure, but it's can be a little behind the times. I like the thing I would point out most would be the graphical interface is not yet easily scalable. You're kind of stuck at what you make it. And I think in time this will improve, but it's a slow process because they have to keep the package more or less backwards compatible with all the products that have been released thus far. But yeah, I mean, that's about it. And I think some people become frustrated with installer software from Native Access, but I gotta say it could probably be a lot worse because I have very few technical issues that come in. When they come in, people are pretty frustrated about it because they've bought this thing and they want to use it. I can totally understand. So really try my best to get them up and running, but it's pretty few and far between. So I think it's mostly I just hear certain people don't like Contact. They've tried it before, or it's like too much money or something. Even though my software runs on Contact Player, which is free, so you just buy the Robot Dog Drums product. So yeah, and that I think that kind of sums up the whole Contact thing.
I will be one to say that I've had issues with Contact Player. I have not had issues with your software on Contact Player, but with like Guitar Rig, and I've used other drum packs before. So I don't know if it's... I also have like an older machine. Maybe that's the problem, is that Contact Player is pretty heavy compared to like just the standalone plugins. But do you know what size, like, because your drum library is about 13 gigs. Would it be that large as a standalone plugin too? Do you know?
I think it would be. The one frustrating thing is you, for some reason, need about 50 gigs free to install the package, even though it doesn't take up that space. So people have been frustrated about that. So I put a big warning on the product page that you need that space free. It's not going to occupy that much space, but for whatever reason, the installer requires that much. I don't think I don't think the size of the samples, that's kind of, they are what they are. So that isn't really the heavy part. It just got to be that big as I was just putting everything in that I wanted to put in. And I, covered a lot of genres of rock music and stuff. And I just honestly wasn't really sure who all the end users would gravitate toward. I think I think now that I've gotten some feedback and I know what people really love out of the pack, that, maybe there was some stuff that wasn't necessary, but I don't know, a lot. I think that's one of the things people love about it is how many drums and cymbals and stuff there are included. So I guess I'm glad I went that route, made it really comprehensive like that, because people seem to like it.
Mm-hmm. You surprised me, because when I think of drum samples and drum software, I think of metal, I think of hard rock, stuff like that. And you record and you seem to listen to all different kinds of music. And I think all the content I saw around you was like underground, indie, rock, stuff like that. So stuff that's very like tone bass, acoustic drums, real guitar amps. Have you noticed that the people who are downloading your stuff is predominantly like metal, hard rock stuff, or do you get a good mix of everything?
It's interesting. I do get a good mix of everything, and I think where I was really lucky was my product is appealing to some kind of up and coming genres, or genres that are coming back around again, like shoegaze and even hardcore, and then also like alternative rock, like grungy rock. So it hits on a lot of those points that are not tech death metal, which kind of so many of the other products are going toward gent or tech death. And I think that's like a cool, that's like the pinnacle of like all this metal production and stuff, but it's probably a smaller niche than all these folks that are playing kind of Nirvana type rock music, or knocked loose kind of hardcore stuff. That's things that are up and coming, and a lot of folks are playing these days.
So you talked about 13 gigs worth of drum samples. How many drum samples is that, and just how long did it take you to actually capture 13 gigs worth of drum samples?
Oh boy, it's funny because I probably have all the drums and cymbals on my website. It's a bunch. There's like I can't even remember off the top of my head, but it's funny because I obviously I was so steeped in this project at the time, and I was so obsessed with it. But now I'm kind of on to being obsessed with other things. But at the time, it like consumed my life, and it took a very long time. It took a few years, and the thing is that I had my initial round of samples and kits that I had sampled, and I got them up and running in the software. I would test them out on electronic drums and stuff, and I was going through my own testing process, and samples that were bugging me, or like I wouldn't use in a mix, or I couldn't fit into a mix in some way, I would just have to get rid of them. Certain ringy drums, overtones that I didn't like, I would have to go back and redo the drums. Also, I would discover new ways to sample the drums, like this whole positional sensing thing on the snare for V drums. I took advantage of that, so I would have to go back and then resample all the snares in that way. Stuff like that I got really obsessed with. I don't know if the payoff was there. I think a certain small percentage of people have appreciated those fine details. But would I do it again? I might do it a little differently. But yeah, it was just a long process, and I would test them and use them, and I really distilled it. Even though there's a lot of drums, I really distilled it to the cream of the crop. Also, like I would I got so close to the end, and then I realized like, oh, kind of I've tuned all my snare drums to this medium or low um, kind of sound because that's kind of like what I was into. But my friend who does more metal and hardcore and stuff needs those higher tune snares, so I'm like, I gotta add to this pack. That's why you get to the bottom of the snare list, and those are all the high tune pingy snares and stuff, because I kind of just brought those in at the end to round out the pack. So I as you can see, I'm getting all fired up. I was very inspired and obsessed at the time to complete this project. Get five or like four brands of cymbals, five full cymbal sets, stuff like that. And when I just if I had all these kinds of drums, I had to get all these other kinds of drums. I just had to like complete the set as like a kind of like a need for completion thing.
Well, that is a ton of work, and I think it pays off because the whole library sounds great, and I think you've gotten a lot of good feedback. A lot of people love it. In addition to your drum samples, you said 13 gigs worth of drum samples wasn't enough. You also have this whole separate section that I love, Robot Dog Cabs. So you made your own impulse responses, and I honestly love these. I think they're some of the best out there, especially you're my go-to bass impulse response, that Galen Kruger with that. I think it's the custom mic that you promoted. Whatever that IR is, that's amazing. Can you talk about why you wanted to go into cab IRs?
This is a really interesting one for me, honestly, and I love hearing your feedback on the cab IRs because I kind of feel like you're an expert in this realm, and I am the cab, like the drums thing. I really drilled down, and I have a lot of experience in that world. The cab thing, it was just something I was kind of dabbled in and did out of necessity. I had always recorded guitar cabs in the studio space that I had, and I found out that I had to move out of the studio space. So I was like, oh, how can I take this sound with me? So I did a deep dive on cab IRs just for like a week, just for like a couple days out of my life. But if you see on the website, I have 15 mics on the cab or whatever. So I figured out a workflow for doing that. But it was the only time I ever did it. And I really just did it how I would mic cabs in my space normally. And when I tried them, I felt like they sounded exceptionally good. But I don't know why. I don't know why. I mean, there may just be, for one thing, they may just be louder. I don't know. I really don't know, but I do like them. And there's also a huge variety of them. And there are, like you said, a custom mic. There are mics that you don't always see in cab IR packs. But that one, it was just a truly lucky thing that they came out so good, so usable, because it was my first stab at it. And I just recorded them like I would record mics in my studio normally.
So is the process for making an IR, do you just send, I don't say just as in, it's so easy, but instead of hitting a drum, you have to send a WAV file or something and then capture that?
Yeah, you send a signal sweep through the cab. So I wired up a solid state power amp to run into each cab. So I just felt like that would be a flatter thing, the flattest thing, rather than running a guitar amp or something. So yeah, it's just, it goes from very low and it's just like, ooh, it's just something like that. I don't remember how long it takes, but it's maybe 10 seconds, something. It's not long. And I guess that just goes through the whole range of frequencies, and you use another piece of software to kind of distill it down into the tiniest little blip sound. It just sounds like a clip, like a tiny clipped transient. And apparently that tiny little wave file distills all of the frequency characteristics of the amp, and they work surprisingly well. But it's a pretty straightforward process. I'd say just about anyone could do it with some basic equipment. And I've considered actually doing it in future recording sessions, just to kind of have a backup kind of encapsulation of the guitar sound that we use.
So do you normally just record with the onboard preamps of whatever interface or desk you're using?
Yes, I actually totally do that now, and I love it. Back in the past, my previous studio, I, just like everyone, I had to dabble in this outboard preamp thing, and just what flavor of preamp am I going to use? And I remember early on, well, preamps was like one of the very first things that I got, because years ago you would go on forums, and maybe things were different. I remember kind of some of my early interfaces sounding particularly terrible, but I built some preamps from kits, and I remember trying them out for the first time, and immediately I was like, well, this band still sounds like they sound. It changed nothing. So right from the jump, I was like, yeah, preamps they're just that 1% on top of everything else. And then just workflow wise, in my old studio, I'd be like, oh, what preamp do we use here? It just like, I was so ready to just use this Mackie mixer that I have with all the preamps built in. They're all hooked up all the time, and I love it. And I may even dig the sound. It's just cleaner, more straightforward. Do everything on the computer with plugins. You know, it's I like it workflow wise. Just built-in preamps.
Can we talk about your studio situation real quick? You talked about, you made all your products, your Robot Dog drums and Robot Dog cabs, in your commercial space studio. You mentioned you were forced out of that studio, and you have a lot of videos on your YouTube about this. Great videos, by the way. Can you just quickly sum up your journey from that commercial space studio to where you are now?
I had a commercial space in Vermont, very small state, but was close to the biggest town in Vermont, Burlington. There's a great music scene there. I had a commercial space for about 7 years. The pandemic hit, and it's not like I went out of business. I pivoted, and we did a lot of cool stuff through the pandemic, but Vermont is going through a really crazy shift in real estate and business and everything. And I was just such a small business that it really wasn't going to be worth it to keep on going there, renting. And I was not in a position to own a space there. So I had to leave that space, and I looked around for a new space for a while, but it just wasn't going to work out. So it was been a really long transition of the past 3 or 4 years, going from having that studio space that I worked in, had employees and had interns, and just was a busy commercial studio, to developing Robot Dog drums, and in the meantime kind of doing some mobile things, which I had always done. I started out doing mobile recording 20 or more years ago, so it was never a foreign thing to me. And I would just have these people that still wanted to record. But I got a little burnt out on that. So I have been building a studio at my home here, which I'm really excited about. But I'm doing everything from scratch, and doing everything myself, doing everything on a cash basis. So as I have money to do it, and also using a lot of salvaged, reclaimed materials to keep costs down, and just because I like making use of things in that way. So that's a long process, and just over this past winter, I really got the itch to have a space again in my old scene, in that music scene, in this very small state, but it has this really fun, really active vibrant music scene. I just lucked upon a place, like an industrial loft space, just really piqued my interest. Just kind of had that beautiful vibe to it, and just seemed like it would be a nice place to work in, and would look great in the background of video and stuff. So I was able to set that up just over this past winter, just a few months ago. So that's kind of tiding me over. I have this little, I don't know, you call it a pop-up studio. I've done some videos on how I set up and built it and stuff. And it's, it's just one room, so that has its challenges. But all my stuff is there, and I can record a live band in no time. And like, if they're all set up, we can be recording in like 20 minutes. And that place is tiding me over while I work hard every day, pretty much, building this studio that's more purpose built at my home with soundproofing and lines of sight between the booths and the control room, and just everything that I would want to have in a studio space. I'm trying to do it right here.
A big thank you to Ryan for making the time to hang out with me. I really like his videos, and his plugin is awesome. Make sure you go subscribe to his channel. Links are in the description. If you want to learn more about the Rock Lock, links are in the description. And I think that's all I got for you. So thank you for hanging out. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.